Hey everyone, welcome to OILife. If you're new here, OILife is a space for people living with osteogenesis imperfecta, our families, and our allies. It's about sharing real stories, building connections, and reminding each other that we're not navigating this alone. Now, today's OILife Spotlight features Gaelynn Lea. That's right, Gaelynn is a musician, composer, advocate, and now author whose work moves between creativity, disability culture, and lived experience in a way that feels honest and really deeply human. So we talk about life with a Y because that's part of the story, but we also talk about music, we talk about identity, listening to your body, and finding your own way in a world that doesn't always make space for difference. This conversation is all about presence, creativity, and what it means to live fully in the body that you have. So let's get into it. All right, everybody, we are here. This is it. This is Gaelynn Lea. She is an amazing individual, and I'm so happy that she is here with us today in the OILife Spotlight. What's going on, Gaelynn? How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm kind of at the beginning of a new chapter with a memoir and just enjoying, just like creative endeavors and trying new things. Yeah, but I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so great to see you. I know we've connected before in the past with some fitness stuff, which is great. I know you take care of yourself, so that's a great thing. But yeah, welcome to the OILife Spotlight. So I'm going to dive into these questions, and we're always going to start with, in the OILife Spotlight, since this is all about, we do touch on OI, and that is our community. I like to get this out of the way. It's called the Fab Four. So it's what type of OI do you have? How many fractures have you had? How many surgeries have you gone through? And do you have any hardware in your body? So if you can just run down your Fab Four for us, we'll start with that.
Sure. Wow. I have, I think, type 3, although I have never had a genetic test, so I do not actually know for sure. That's kind of on the bucket list of things I want to figure out. I have had, I don't know, between like in utero, who knows, a ton of fractures because my limbs are bent. And then after I was born, a bunch of spinal compression fractures. I've never really counted. I think probably like 16 other fractures, like limbs. So not a ton, I guess, comparatively. I don't know. But more than most of my friends, I can say that. And then hard surgeries. I only have really had, I had some bone spurs removed that I kept getting, had a spinal fusion, and then I had my arm rotted when I was like 1. I don't remember it at all, but and those are all kind of the surgeries. So not a lot, but my parents wanted to wait till I was old enough to decide, and I said I didn't want them. So I didn't get any of the rotting surgeries. And then the last question is, do I have any hardware? Yes. My spine has a lot of hardware, more hardware than they were planning on. But that's it. So that's where I'm at. That's okay. That's like the only interview I've ever had that question, obviously.
No, it's absolutely strange and specific, right? For our community. Yeah. This is something that only OIers are going to understand. So that's why I always like to go through the Fab Four with everybody.
That's awesome.
Those are some great stats, though. It's great because everybody's different, and it's just, again, showing that we all have different, it's a full spectrum, the OI community. So I love to hear it. So let's talk about your creative endeavors. If somebody is just watching and they're just learning about you for the first time, we want to talk about the fact that you play violin.
Oh, yeah. So my journey with where I'm at now probably started most prominently in 5th grade. I wanted to play in orchestra. I had heard an orchestra the year before, and I knew I really wanted to do it. And I was very, very lucky. It shouldn't have to be this way, but I was very lucky that the teacher who happened to teach junior high orchestra was really open-minded and said, well, let's try to find a way for you to play. As you all know, if you have OI, it's often not your own thinking, oh, I can't do that. A lot of times it's other people's thinking that you can't do that. And so it hadn't occurred to me that I wouldn't be able to figure it out. But luckily I was met with an open-minded teacher who really wanted to help me. And so we ended up finding a way to play violin where I play it up and down like a tiny cello, and I bow like a bass player, like an upright bass player. I don't bow the way that a violinist normally does. But it works. And I had to adapt some other minor details that wouldn't make sense unless you played violin. But most of it, it's about the sound. And so I was able to keep playing. I played all the way through high school and did classical. And then I got into fiddle music, like jams, group jams, in college, and eventually started writing my own music as an adult, like not till I was 27. So I'd already played violin for like 17 years. And songwriting is what really kind of set me on the trajectory to where I am now. But it wouldn't have, none of that would have happened without that really cool teacher. So I'm really grateful for her. Like I wish that everybody had teachers that was willing to kind of adapt and be creative with people. But yeah, so I'm grateful for her.
Yeah, absolutely. We all need someone like that in our lives, right? That can look beyond or look and at the any sort of disability or something like that, and not see it as a limitation. More like, okay, well, just how do we adapt to this, right? Like, how do we figure it out? Is there anything specifically? Now, you talked about you play a little bit differently. Was there anything specific with the actual equipment that you had to modify?
Yeah, pretty much the two things I had to modify is I had to find a way to keep the violin in my wheelchair because it would slip out. It's not designed to stand up. So we ended up adding a little piece to the bottom of it that was kind of like a pointy little stick, and I would put it through a grommet in my wheelchair. That was the first iteration. Now I have a strap tied to the bottom piece of the violin that I hold between my toes so that it doesn't slide out on me. And then the only other, which is a big deal, the other adaptative piece I have is I have a half-size violin bow, but it's made to be shaped like a bass bow because I do hold it differently. It actually does kind of require some different mechanics. And so somebody made that for me as a really generous gift when I had already played for 3 or 4 years, and it was pretty clear I was going to keep going. And so this lady offered to make me a bow, and I've been using it I still use the same one. I'm planning to use it till it like snaps into a million pieces, basically. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Until it dies, right? You're like, yeah, I'm gonna keep going. That's so awesome. That's so great that you've been able to like just make it your own, make it your own and make it give you the ability to play no matter what. That's so cool. Yeah, so you've collaborated with, so many artists across different genres ever since you've been playing professionally. Now, when you're stepping into someone else's, musical world, what helps you feel grounded to really, be yourself, to, still be yourself in that moment?
That's a good question. Wow, you're a good music interviewer. You should do that more often. So I think what it is just I really love playing by feel, like improvising. And so the biggest I would start. I did the fiddle jams, and that was really fun. And then a guy named Andy Gable asked me if I could jam with him, and I just kind of played harmonies to what I heard. And my violin's got its own sound because of the way I play. It's a little bit, it's long and smooth, and it's got its own melodic thing going on. And so I would do that, and then as I got asked to do other groups, it's really about the improvising. I think the biggest shift that I've kept with me, but wasn't there when I started, is I started working with a guy named Alan Sparhawk of the band Low way back in 2011. And he introduced me to a piece of technology called a looping pedal, which a lot of guitarists use, but not so much violinists. Although Andrew Bird, if you're familiar with that name, he does looping. And there's a few other ones, but basically it's like a recording device, and you record the first layer in real time, and then you can add multiple layers, and eventually it sounds like there's like 8 violins playing all together, and that's sort of it's a cool tool. And so he taught me about it, and at the beginning, because as you say, to stay grounded, I would just play harmonies to what I heard, and then he would loop it, and then I'd play harmonies to 2 things that I heard, and like build it up from there. And then eventually, though, I did figure out that I could build my own arrangements that way. And so that's kind of how I got into, performing solo shows, is I would loop myself and then sing on top of the whole thing. But yeah, the grounding element for all the things I do, I think, is a love of harmony and figuring out where I can fit. And then for performance, what makes me feel grounded when I'm singing, because I sing too, especially during solo shows, what makes me feel grounded is trying to center my energy on the words and then push that energy out into the audience. I think remembering that you're only a very small part of the equation when it comes to music. I think people, it kind of transcends, like it's not just about the performer, it's about the energy in the room and about what that person needs to hear. And so it's easy as a performer to get stuck in your head and be too worried about, like, oh, what if this isn't going well? What if I messed up here? And I mean, I can do that too, for sure. But I think what makes me grounded is when I remember that it's kind of out of my hands, and it's just you just want to try to be as present as you can and then let it go. And that helps me stay grounded in performance. And that's for anyone. Like if it's a solo show or if it's with a band or with another band that I'm not usually part of, it's trying to stay present in the moment is what keeps you grounded, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now you kind of touched on this a little bit, and I just want to jump to this because you do a lot of work around disability culture and accessibility, of course. So, when was the moment that you realized, through playing the music, oh, this is bigger than just me and my music?
Yeah, for the access piece, it's kind of interesting how the universe worked to kind of bring all this stuff together at the same time. I had just started performing solo in like 2013, and I still did groups and stuff, but that was something I was getting more comfortable with. In 2015, right, the year before I won the Tiny Desk, I had a really bad experience right when we got married of a caseworker not knowing the rules of the healthcare program I was on and telling us that we weren't eligible for anything in a really uncompassionate way. And she was wrong, like we were, but she got it wrong. And instead of looking it up, just was very uncompassionate about it. And I remember being really frustrated about, the healthcare, like people who are there supposedly to help you, completely giving you bad information can really alter your life in a terrible way. And so, long story short, a friend of mine said, there's a conference in Duluth for healthcare workers, for health and human service workers. You should speak at it. And I had never thought about public speaking, but I decided I might as well. So I was really nervous. So I actually created a survey. It's still on my website today. You can go take it if you want to, and I'd love you to take it if you haven't yet. But about disability and comprehensive wellness, because that's something I'm really interested in. Like disability affects every area of life, and so how, in what ways is it helping or an asset, and in which ways is society kind of still keeping you out? And so I made this survey so that I knew I wasn't going to just be spewing out my own opinion, and felt kind of sadly validated by a lot of the things I had struggled with, or were also things other people mentioned a lot. And so I started speaking, and I did this first event, and then I got booked around Duluth. And then literally within the year, I had won the Tiny Desk contest, which is an NPR music sponsored. There were 6,000 entrants from all over the country. So it was a huge leap up in terms of publicity and stuff. I really, really had been very local up until that point. And so, never saw it coming. And so when I won, I had already, just because I had a business coach that was like, put speaking on your website. If you put it on your website, people will hire you. And it's turned out, yeah, in Duluth, people were starting to say, oh, she does this thing. But because it was already on my website when I won, right away, I started getting requests nationally. And the reason I embraced that is because that very first event in Duluth, these are people that work with disabled people every day of their job. After the event, they were like, so much of this I didn't know. And I was very alarmed, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, holy cow, you're really, I mean, I didn't say that to them, but in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, they really should know all this. So if they don't know it, who's going to start telling them? And it became important to me to start sharing, even because I'm not afraid of public speaking, because I enjoy it. Actually, I was I don't expect that everybody with a disability needs to become a crusader of conferences and stuff, but it's something I liked, and it felt like the information just needs to get out there. And if I can be part of the solution, sign me up, And then as I started touring, it became really obvious that accessibility is extremely lacking in the music industry. A lot of venues aren't accessible to even audience members, but especially not to the artists. And so I kind of like, I mean, I still talk about general accessibility, and like I love speaking to different groups because everybody's got their own kind of angle on like what they have influence on. But for a lot of my work now, it's about how to make the arts more accessible
That's great.
to people with disabilities. But honestly, it's just a passion to like speak up about what we can do. And I say passion with an asterisk because my real passion is more in line with what you do, like wellness and maybe like spiritual wellness or physical wellness or social wellness. But if you don't have accessibility, it's really hard to access that. So I feel like I hope there's a day where the information I'm giving at these conferences is like, oh yeah, don't worry, we've already got that covered. That'd be great.
Right.
And then I would focus on other stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's such a great journey. Thank you for sharing how that kind of transformed for you. And speaking of that, with I want to touch on the technical stuff. So even for me, I'm the same, where I have a big background in music and in performance of music, right? And
I forgot about that. That's why you're so good at interviewing about music.
So yeah, that's part of it. But it's like when it came time to then transition to the public speaking, when it was like, oh, now I got to get up and talk about myself more, because more when you're doing songs, yeah, it's personal and stuff, but it's it's still kind of a performance. Whereas when we're public speaking, we're just kind of up there as ourselves. We're kind of sharing our personal stories, really getting into the nitty gritty of things. How was that for you? And what advice would you give to people? Because, a lot of OIers that watch this, they get that same approach. People will come up to them and say, hey, I'd love for you to talk at, my kid's school or at my company or somewhere. Like, what advice could you give to fellow OIers that would be like, it's okay you can have that confidence. You can go speak, you can turn it down, number one, but if you do say yes, what advice would you give to someone to just kind of, give them that confidence boost and encouragement?
Yeah, I would say a couple things come to mind. First of all, you do have the right to say no. So if you feel like the messaging behind it or the reason they want you to is to feel good or be like, good thing we're not so like burdened as they are. Like, there's different reasons people ask people to speak. And so you have to feel like you have control over the narrative. So if somebody is like telling you, we want to be inspired by you, like you have the right to ask for more information and be like, what do you mean by that? Because to me, I don't want people to feel like, oh, I feel good about that story and now I'm off the hook. Like I like to, this is just me, and I think everybody's got their own way. Either you're encouraging someone to have a broader perspective that is maybe helpful in their life, and that's totally legit and that's cool. But our goal, I think, as speakers is often not just to say, oh, that was a feel good story, so much as how can people apply it to their lives. So one thing I think, if you're feeling not sure about like what your angle would be or what your thing is, think about what you're passionate about, and then do a little bit of research about how people with disabilities fare in that area. Like employment, I got asked at the beginning to a lot of talking about employment. Like I'm not an employment analyst, but there's a lot of data out there that disabled people are chronically underemployed, right? And so having just a few, it doesn't need to be like a PowerPoint with 85 stats, but like have a couple, just because I think the goal is not only are they going to like learn something by your personal story, but I think it's really cool that we have the power, because nobody's getting taught any of this stuff at school right now. Maybe someday they will. But like educate them too in like what the reality of disability is like in our society. And then be confident in your story, because you're an expert in disability, even if you don't know it, if you live with it. And then the other thing I think of is, feel good about sharing your story, and then maybe take a moment to let them know that there's a lot of kind of disabilities and that you're not the only story out there. So because I think it's important for us to own our stories, but it's also important for us to acknowledge that like, I'm a white woman who uses an electric wheelchair. I'm not going to know what a black person who's blind exactly goes through. And I think it's important for an organization, for example, to think about accessibility or inclusion in really broad terms. So just even just the disclaimer that like there's a lot of stories out there, they don't all look like mine. And it's important to keep digging just to open people's minds. I love referring them to like other artists or other activists at the end so that they can keep doing the work. But yeah, I encourage you to like think of the thing you're most passionate about. If you could fix or change or educate people on one thing about disability, what would it be? And craft a presentation around it. You know, like for me at the beginning, it was healthcare and health human services professionals need to be respectful. That was the very first one. And then you kind of think about like, well, what else do I care about? And finding ways to just build them ahead of time. You know, I used to be in debate. I think that's why I like this kind of thing. Like in high school, that was as a big nerd, by the way, but debate was a thing, and you have 3 points and like a couple things underneath each point, and that's all you need. So it's not that hard to make a speech. So I know it can be scary, but you are able and competent to do it. But make sure you don't feel like you're being talked down to or that you're being seen as a pity case, because you do have the right to say no and you have the right to get paid. So that's the other thing. I think a lot of disabled people feel like, well, I'm just lucky to share my story. And that's great if you're a millionaire and you don't need to pay any bills. But like, if you do, it's a job, you're putting in labor. And so just don't feel weird about asking about that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you made that point, because I always tell people that. I'm like, make sure you're getting paid, because other speakers are getting paid too. So it's definitely something you can get paid for. Yeah, I like that. I think it's definitely a good encouragement and good advice to really focus on that one thing first. You know, that one kind of topic, the one thing that you feel you can share, especially from what you've lived, right? Like just think of it that way. What have you lived, and how can you share that story and understand that people are more inspired by your story, not necessarily you. It's kind of like that story of you sharing and what you've accomplished through that is what they're really inspired by. So, and that's great, you know, because we do want to inspire people with our stories. So yeah, great advice. I love it. Now let's talk a little bit about the fact that you scored for Macbeth on Broadway. I mean, this is wild. Like, we got to talk about this. So tell me what's the difference about telling a story through, you know, atmosphere and tension, you know, instead of like lyrics, right?
Yeah, that's a great. Wow, I love your questions. Yep. So the Macbeth adventure was so different, and luckily, way back in 2011, when I first met Alan Sparhawk, the first thing we ever did together was play a live score for a silent film. It was just like one weekend, but it really helped. Oh my gosh, if I hadn't done that, I think I would have been like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But Alan and I kind of like together would come up with these musical themes for either different scenes or different characters. So what I kind of decided to do for Macbeth is I read the script. First I read Macbeth for Dummies, then I read Real Macbeth, and then I also got a recording of the first read through. So like I could hear their voices. I couldn't see anybody, but I could hear their voices. And I started kind of like starring places I thought I heard music, and then went over that list with the director, and we made a final list of 50 cues. And then I really just set out to like kind of create a musical theme for the main characters that I could bring in and change. Like, you know, Macbeth, in case, spoiler alert, you don't know, ends up murdering basically everybody. So he's not a good guy.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Wait, I've never, no, I'm just kidding.
It's an old show. So if you haven't heard it, yeah. So anyways, he's not great. And by the end, he's really bad. And so he starts out kind of like his melody is more pure, and by the end it's quite like distorted, and it was really fun to kind of play with what was happening to the characters. One of them comes back as a ghost, so they have a beautiful melody at the beginning, and it comes back in much creepier and distorted, and so like just different things like that. But it was more about the timing and the general feel of the moment plus these themes. So that if I hadn't had the themes, I think it might have been a kind of more abstract, and to me maybe not as interesting, because when you have the themes, you can say, how does this theme fit with what's happening on stage right now, and how do I kind of convey the emotion of the moment using this theme. So, some stuff kind of reappears, but not in the same exact way. So we ended up, I got to release a soundtrack of it eventually, like in 2025. And I released the one that I personally like. So when I first went into the project, I had made these 50 cues and I was really, really excited about it. And it's not like, it's true. The music has to support the moment on stage. So there were some cues that got cut, some cues that got really reduced, some cues that got totally changed. But I liked the first one better in my heart, so the soundtrack I released was the original in my mind soundtrack, not what was on stage, because it's true. You don't want to hear the music necessarily when you're watching something. You want the music to support what you're watching, right? And so sometimes what I created was too much for that moment, for example. And so we had to like cut it or put something more simple in there, which is fine. But I wanted to create for the soundtrack, I wanted to create like what I heard the first time I read it. And so that's sort of what the soundtrack ended up being. It was really, really fun to go back to it a couple years later. I took some time because I was writing the memoir, so I didn't really work on the soundtrack, but I released it in May of this past year, 2025. And so to come back to that music after 2 years off was really fun to like recreate the initial vision. But it was fun to do the show. I mean, I learned so much about how theater works and how like all of these parts are working together and in their individual little spheres of influence. And like, you're a tiny little cog in the wheel of a play. Like, it's not the same thing as being like the performer that's up on stage singing. It's much, much more like you're part of a team building this thing. So it was a cool experience. My parents had a dinner theater when I was growing up. And so I was always at their rehearsals because we didn't have babysitters. They just brought us with them. And so I was around theater a lot growing up, and I was in some plays as a kid, but I hadn't done anything at all with theater since like basically high school. So it was like 20 years later to get back into the theater world was quite a trip. It was really fun. My parents were over the moon, basically.
Can imagine. Yeah. They're like, oh, finally, she's doing something we can understand, maybe.
Yeah, no,
they totally get it, right?
Yeah, that was so cute. So yeah, it was really fun. So
cool.
they got to come see opening night and everything, and it was pretty awesome to have them.
Wow. Congratulations on that. That's so cool. I want to have you talk a little bit more in depth about the Tiny Desk contest. So, just tell me about that moment in your life before and after, right? And really, what did it unlock for you?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's hard to overstate how much life changed after that. Before that, I mean, I was really happy. That's the weird thing. I was in a great place. I was teaching fiddle lessons full time. I mean, like, to me, full time was like 16 students a week. And 5 days a week, I had like a few students every day. And I was like chucking along, really happy, seeing friends for, half price wine night every Wednesday or whatever. Like, just had a little life and playing a lot of shows on the weekend. Like, I would play probably 5 or 6 shows a month in Duluth where I lived. And like, and my husband and I had been married a few years and had a house, and we were just doing well and everything was great. And then I won this contest. I entered because 2 fiddle students told me about it. And then my best friend texted me about it. And I was like, because I kind of had dismissed the students one as like, I don't know. But then when she sent me, I was like, 3 feels weird. Like, I should probably do something about this. So I did enter kind of at the last minute on the crappiest smartphone in the world. So like the video is very low tech and it glitches in the middle and everything. It's so bad. But the performance, the weird part is when I had the same friend who told me about it, my best friend told me I had her tape it in my studio where I taught lessons, and she said the second one gave me goosebumps. And I was like, weird. She's never told me that about anything I've ever played. So I was like, well, we'll do that one. And that's the one we entered. So then didn't hear anything for a month. Kind of forgot about it, to be honest. And then, I got a call one day in the middle of lessons. I got an email first. They said, we'd like to talk to you. And I was like, okay, you can call at this time. I've got some space. And it was Bob Boylan, the host of the show, on the other end of the line. And he's like, I just love how you are doing the looping with those traditional fiddle tunes, because I play traditional tunes, and I was really weirded out because that's not what I entered. I had entered one of my songs, and I was like, why does he know about that? Like it's just a lot of the questions are swirling around, and he said, we'd like to name you the winner of the Tiny Desk contest. How about that? And it was just, I remember exactly where I was. I looked at a little sign on my desk. I was like, this is really going to change. I could just tell, but I had no idea in what ways. But it was like very clearly like the before and after moment. I mean, I felt it then. Like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. It was very weird. Yeah. And so then after, like I couldn't talk about it for a week. I could tell a few people. Like I could tell my friend because she had filmed it. I could tell Alan Sparhawk and my parents and Paul. And I really wasn't allowed to talk about it, which was the longest week of my life. And then after the announcement, it was kind of a whirlwind. We went to DC. We did 4 other shows. And then I got all these offers to play. And that's when my husband and I decided we would try to tour full time, because it was now or never kind of, it was such there would be no reason not to try. And we were really lucky. Once again, it's like supportive people make all the difference. Like his boss, his work, he was a custodian at the university, and they said you can take 6 months unpaid leave, and if you don't like it, come back to us and we'll let you work here. And so it wasn't like financial. It's just good to know that like if it wasn't going to work, we hadn't just thrown away our whole lives. But we did sell our house. We bought a van, and I rehoused all my students because I didn't know. I was like, if I come back, of course, then I'll start teaching you again. But like, I don't think I can do both, which I'm glad I didn't. That would have been really hard. Although I love them and I miss them, and I still see them out and about sometimes. So we just started touring, and it was like just it's a very hard career. Have you toured at all?
I did, like regionally, Southwest region.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
it's fun.
It's
fun, but it's a lot. I mean, it's not like it's a school of hard knocks. Not when you're with NPR Music. Then it's amazing. They have everything planned for you.
Yeah.
But once
you're doing it on your own, right?
It's like 12 people come, or 4 people come, or somebody passes out, or like it's just so many like weird stories. But then also you meet these really amazing people, and a lot of them end up becoming your friends, or like you end up really connecting with a city. You get to see the whole country. There were so many really cool things about it. We toured all the way up until the pandemic. We were literally on our way to a tour when the pandemic happened. So 3.5 years or 2.5 solid. What would that have been? 3.5 years that we were basically on the road like 9 months out of every year. And we were only ever home for like the longest, I think, was like 3 weeks at a time. So we were gone a lot, but it was really fun because we were together. I think once the book comes out, we'd like to get on the road. I don't know quite that much because that was a lot. Like, and now I look back and I'm like, how did we do that? Like,
right.
We did like a lot of shows, like hundreds of shows every year. So like it was a lot, but it was a very cool experience. And now life has like, it'll never be what it was before, just because it was such a big transformation. It was weird. It was really cool though. So enter it next year if you get a chance.
I gotta check that out.
It is awesome.
Speaking of touring, so it's great to hear that that moment, you felt that moment even when you got the message, when you knew that you had won, because a lot of people don't even get to experience that. They just kind of get swept away into the moment, and then you don't realize, oh, things have completely changed, right? So it's great that you actually had that moment where you're like, oh yeah, you kind of looked around and you're like, oh no, things are about to change. This is it. So it's so cool. Yeah.
It's really weird.
You go out and tour. You've kind of hit it. You're like on tour. You're doing shows. Now touring with OI and with the body that you have. I mean, this is a whole thing, right? So you're traveling, the venues, you're talking about, the lack of accessibility, resting, recovering. I don't know what your lifestyle was during that time. I know when we were touring, we'd go and we have some drinks. We're hanging out with friends. We're doing some partying stuff. So it's like, but you have to have all these things. So Tell me, let's talk about maybe one behind the scenes reality that people don't think about, like when it comes to living on the road and doing this sort of work as someone with brittle bones.
Yeah, I would say, oh man, that's the thing. I think the biggest thing for us is that we had to be really smart about how, like, I was really grateful that I had public speaking that I could like work in there. Like sometimes because public speaking by far and away pays more than playing at a crappy like club or whatever. And so I needed that to balance it out, because something that people don't think about is I can't like sleep on someone's floor of their house. Like I can't even get into their house basically. So like we ended up having to do hotels. I mean, granted they were not nice hotels, but like we had to stay places every night because it was just not feasible. And so, like, if you're touring with a disability, I think there are often underlying costs that other artists maybe don't have to think about. If I need an accessible bathroom, there's just so few places that you could stay outside of hotels. So that was maybe a big one that, like, you hear other people's stories and you're like, that doesn't really, I never really did that. Like, I mean, maybe you did, because can you walk? I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah, I can.
Yeah. So since I can't, and I never have, and I've always had electric wheelchair, it really limits that. And then the other big behind the scenes that really changes things is if you fly somewhere and you don't have your own vehicle, it just makes it so much more complicated and pretty much more stressful, basically, is what that translates to.
Yeah.
So I think as an artist now, like I just now signed up, I had a booking agent for a while, and it turned out that I ended up having to do most of the access stuff myself. And it was like, it didn't feel worth it, basically, because I didn't feel like, I mean, it was a lot of work. So
Yeah.
I ended up doing my own booking since 2018 until basically last month, where now I have a booking agency and they're finally excited about helping me make it accessible. But a lot of it's like you're on your own kind of at the beginning. And so I wish I had, I mean, I was not too much of a partier. I'm a night owl, so I definitely had like some beers after, or like stayed up late and talked,
Late
but
nights. Yeah.
I'm not like a real big partier. And I don't, I tried to schedule it where we didn't usually have to get up super early and drive. Like I would try to give us enough to make it feel somewhat sustainable. But I will say, when we go back out now, like you should do what you really feel you can do and not compare yourself to other people. And I mean, you got to make it work financially. Like luckily, for all those years we were on the road, we didn't go into debt again because of speaking. And so that was a piece of advice I got really early from a friend in an unrelated field who is self-employed, was like, try to diversify what you do, because you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. And I will say that doing something like public speaking, or maybe you consult with people on the side over Zoom or whatever you do, like having more than one income stream is really helpful on the road, because you don't want to have to push yourself till you break. And I will say by 2018, I had a pretty rocky couple months where I think we had like a 6-month, or no, sorry, misspeaking, a 6-week tour, but that's really long. I mean, we were from Florida to California back to Minnesota, and I was feeling pretty burned out by the end of that. So you got to listen to your body, which is not something I naturally do very well. And so anyone, whether or not you have OI, and then the biggest issue too was just like the safety, the reason I'm so adamant now about stages is like for many gigs, for the first, until I started booking my own stuff, I would get to a venue, they would know, every single venue received the document that said I have a wheelchair, I need a ramp, and almost none of the venues would do it. So then it's not just like a inconvenience or lack of dignity, which are also real when you have to get lifted up, but it's a safety issue because I do have OI. Right. And I don't want to break a bunch of stuff. And I haven't broken that many bones. My bones seem to be, at least right now, I haven't gone through menopause yet or whatever. I'm sure it's going to get worse. But like for right now, they're pretty stable, but it's still really scary to be like, what if they drop me on these stairs or whatever? So I just decided eventually that if they won't get a ramp, I'm just playing on the floor and they can just deal with the embarrassment of that. And I don't point it out I'm not a jerk about it on the stage or anything. Like I try rather to win people over with honey than vinegar. So a lot of times if a venue does get a ramp and they didn't have one before I got there, I try to call it out and say thank you for getting a ramp, and then if they don't have a ramp, I'm on the floor and it's pretty obvious why, because there's no ramp. And so that feels safer to me and more empowering, because you shouldn't have to put yourself in danger. And I know the US has done a really bad job about studying this stuff, but in the UK, they've researched it. And the majority of artists with disabilities have put themselves into dangerous situations to do their work as musicians. And I know that that's true because I've done it myself. And so I think we got to really it's hard and it's scary to draw a line in the sand, but you'll soon see that like the venues that weren't going to help anyways are not really the places that are going to make or break your career anyways. They usually just aren't the places that they're just not. It's not worth it. I one time played a gig at a horribly inaccessible space because it was kind of a well-known venue. And of course you have the dream of like, oh, maybe it'll really kickstart, blah, blah, blah. Nothing changed. It did not it was not worth it, basically, is what I'm saying. And so, take yourself and your safety seriously, because if you wear your body out or destroy it, you can't keep doing the work that you love. So you got to take care of your body. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially because we are dealing with this, it's an added layer. Exactly. It's the added layer. I mean, just touring alone for anybody is going to be rigorous. But then when you've got, what we're dealing with, it's going to be there, not only the fragile bones, but the fatigue, the, lack of energy, et cetera. So those are all things to consider.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
And don't feel bad. Like, I want people to be able to embrace who they really are and be like, you bring a lot to the world in your own way, especially if you take care of yourself. And so like, you might not do as many shows. Like, I think to some extent, I wasn't doing myself a favor by doing quite as much as we did, because I wasn't being, especially the first couple of years, I wasn't being upfront about what I really needed to feel like this was safe, this was a good idea. It's easier now because I say. It's still hard to like set boundaries, but at least I don't feel like I'm, putting myself at risk. But that does mean that not every gig is going to work out. Like, some gigs will not get the thing you need. And then I guess it's a missed opportunity on some level, but the world's never going to change if we keep allowing ourselves to be put in dangerous situations or unsupportive situations. So like, we can stand up and say, or well, not all of us can stand, but you know what I mean?
We stand your ground. No. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, be okay with setting that limit and know that you're helping the future generation. I would really like it if a kid who's 5 now, when they're my age, like 40, that they don't have to put so much energy into just making sure they have their basic needs met. Yep. And I don't think we're going to get to that point if we keep going along with the status quo.
Yeah, absolutely. The work we're doing now is setting the groundwork for future generations. Absolutely.
Yep. Definitely more than just us, It's definitely a bigger impact.
Did you tour in the UK?
I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how long was it over there?
I would do about between like 6 days and 3 weeks, depending on, I went over about 5 or 6 times.
Nice.
Yeah, like over those many years. They were really fun. I will say I didn't have a car, so I was relying on trains and public transit. And I have some horror stories of after the show getting back to our hotel kind of thing. Because this is the thing that's the reality is, I think disability hasn't been taken seriously enough in almost anywhere in the world. So like there are problems in a lot of places, including the UK. But what's fun about the UK is it's a lot smaller. So the word of your music spreads a lot faster than it does in the US. And so it felt really rewarding to go there because it was almost always like better attended, or people like were more familiar with what you did. And they have a really cool, in a way, almost a more more developed disability culture. Right. I think they've accepted it in the music world more than we have. And so it's also fun to be just kind of meeting. Like this last tour, I went for Macbeth. I went for the album. and I did 10 shows, and for 9 of them, I was able to get disabled openers. Like,
Nice.
and it was really fun to meet other disabled artists from the UK that I had maybe heard of, but not actually like met personally. And so that was really fulfilling, because then it was like also making connections in the community over there. So that was pretty awesome.
And giving space and more stage time for folks, right? So
that's something. Yeah, I really like doing that. And I think that's, I don't know if I want to be like, I mean, even having a guitarist basically doubles the price of any tour that you do. Like, every added person on your roster is just like, makes it that much harder to break even and not have to quit. And so I don't really plan to do a lot of touring with a band at this point, but I do like pairing with local people in the disability community, especially, or people that are just like doing things I think are really cool as a way to share the space, share the time, share the attention, because I do think we need to support each other and not worry. There's, most people have more than one band that they listen to, right? So it's not like such a scarcity mentality that we have to be afraid of uplifting each other, because I don't think we should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how I feel just in the OI community. Like, there's a lot of us that do public speaking, and we all have different stories. We all have OI, but we all have different stories. And I'm always encouraging other people to tell their story, write their book, and all that stuff too. So, I've written 2 books. I'm like, you should write your book too. We need more voices sharing what their story of OI is, right? And with their life with OI. So I think it's really important to support each other. Totally. Speaking of the book, let's go. So it's a memoir, and, it's already been described as warm, as funny, as deeply felt, right? So let's walk through it. Tell us about the book. What is the title of it? And, just kind of give us a quick synopsis of what we can expect.
Yeah. The book is called "It Wasn't Meant to Be Perfect." It's a lyric, actually, from a song that I wrote for Macbeth. There was one singing song in the play. It was at the very end. It's a lyric from that, but it's a little subtle nod to Osteogenesis Imperfecta, obviously. Well, not obviously to most people, probably, but on this podcast.
Thank you. We get it. We get it, by the way. Thank you.
Good job. And I think the synopsis is sort of just exploring my life through the lens of disability and music at the same time. So I didn't want it to just be a disability memoir, and I didn't just want it to be a music memoir. I really wanted to highlight both. And I kind of went through my life and kind of found the chapters where I felt like were turning points or lessons that either I learned or that I wish society would learn. So I think it'll resonate for people with OI for sure. Well, I know that it will, because Gaelynn Heffernan for Wheelchair Sports Camp was one of the early readers. Yeah. And she's like, oh my gosh, I have to write a memoir now. And I'm like, yes, you do. So,
yeah, she does.
Yeah. So, oh my goodness. Yes. Hers will be a page turner. That's all we can say. But the idea of, growing up with a disability, all those things should resonate. But then there's also some parts, like I talk a lot about medical trauma. And part of it's to give a voice to the people who have experienced it, but also to like teach society what it is. Because why it's such a big deal to listen to disabled people when they're in those situations. Same thing with education. It's partly, I'm sure you'll identify as a disabled person with a lot of the stories in there, but also I want educators to read it. So I kind of had different stories, had different audiences in mind. And then some of it was written specifically for the audience of music lover and has less to do with disability, because they're both, I think as an artist, it's not like I don't want to be considered a disabled artist, because obviously I am one and it's a huge part of my identity. But I also just like nerding out about music sometimes. And just like talking about it. So I tried to find a balance. So it goes through childhood up through opening night of Macbeth, basically. And that kind of chapter, the whole touring behind the scenes. I love touring behind the scenes stories. So there's a few of those in there. I think, and hopefully people will leave the book feeling like they were entertained, but also learned something about not just disability, but about creativity and like what they can maybe bring to the table too. I believe everybody's got creative energy that they can give space to. And so hopefully that comes across in the book.
That's awesome. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. We are all creating. We're constantly creating, every single one of us, even when we don't think we are, right? We're constantly creating.
Totally.
Yeah, no, this is great. I love it. I love what I can't wait to read the book. I'm very excited. I felt the same thing when I wrote Disable Your Disability. It was the same sort of concept where it was like, okay, fitness and movement was the kind of through line on my book, right? In addition to having OI. So I totally get it. So I know I'm going to love this book. I can't wait to read it. Now tell me, what was, as you were writing it, like what surprised you the most about, telling and sharing your own story on the page? What surprised you?
Well, the surprise cry attacks. It's not like the book is super sad. I don't think I would call it that, but there are some parts that are emotional for me to relive. And if you're really trying to tell a story that feels real, even if you don't think of yourself as a writer, because honestly, this was my first book. I like writing essays, but I never really fancied myself an author, right? It was really weird how visceral. And what I loved and what I didn't expect is that a lot of, the creative buzz you get when you're performing maybe or you're writing music, it's like just a little heightened energy. There are points in writing where I felt that same exact energy, like it was like translatable exactly the same. And so I think that writing to me became more of like an art as I went along. It felt more like I was accessing the same part of me that I access when I play. And that was a really pleasant surprise because I thought it would all feel like work or that it would feel hard or it was, but really there's an art to it that was really fun. So I hope it reads sort of like a novel almost. Like I want it to be fun for people to read. And then I guess the other thing is just like how long editing takes. I think I had 7 passes by the time we were done. It was,
oh my gosh,
so much. But it was good because every time it got a little bit closer to where now I feel like it's a real book and you can read it and it will feel like a book that you would pick up at a real bookstore. And it's as good as I can get it. And I feel really happy with it. So that's a good feeling, but it took many months. I think I turned it in the first draft, I sent to 12 beta readers, which was too many. You should not do that. You should only do 4 because I was juggling a lot of feedback. Yeah. But it helped. And in the end, I ended up cutting 26,000 words or something. I mean, a lot of words. Yeah. And it got much tighter. And I really valued their feedback, to be honest. All 12 of them gave me something really important to think about or take out or keep in mind. Just such a good learning experience. I definitely think if you haven't written it down, but you feel compelled, it's a worthy pursuit. And it helps you to kind of clarify what you're about too, I'm sure you feel that way.
It's definitely, like you were saying, the crying session. It's a therapy session, really. Like writing a memoir, it really is like one big, long therapy session for yourself. It's like a huge journaling session where you're, doing this. You're just getting and you're bringing back memories, right? Like I remember those times when you're telling a story and you bring a memory back and you're like, wow, I forgot about this until this moment and how I felt in that moment. And things come back. Yeah, I always encourage people to write their stories. It's the best way to really kind of work through your own stuff,
Yeah, and that's the thing is that you are on the right pulse when you feel emotional. I think the temptation and maybe the first draft in some places, you kind of keep some of that away, but it reads more sterile. It doesn't read like you're in the moment. So when you're in the moment, it will read that way, but it'll also feel like you're there again. And I remember I do co-working online where I'll have a guy on the other end or a woman or whatever on the other end of the computer and we'll both be working. And I remember typing one day and then I'm suddenly crying and I'm like, that poor person on the other side of the computer is probably very confused by me
They're
right
like,
now,
is
and
she
I feel
okay?
bad. I'm like, I
Yeah.
promise I'm fine. Yeah, it was very weird.
I
So
think that's
yes,
part of it. Like, I've sat in a couple of those too, where you're with other writers, and that stuff will happen, and
yeah,
like we all just kind of know. It's like, no, that we're working through it. We're writing something really powerful right now when
yeah,
those emotions come up, and it's like the flow state, like you were saying. It really is that flow state where you're just as creating music or whatever you do, maybe artistically, or some people just have it in their normal everyday job where they get into that flow state and like time stands still, and you just get so much done. I think we all
yeah.
experience that. So that's the same thing when you're writing. You can get into that flow state and it's just flowing and it's amazing.
Yeah, and don't worry because you'll edit it later, like
Yeah,
a lot.
absolutely. Yeah.
Doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
perfect
Just
the first time.
get that
Get
first
it out.
draft out. They call it the vomit draft for a reason because you're
That's
just,
exactly
you
true.
know, you're
Yeah,
literally vomiting it out. Just get every word on the page. That's the main thing because all the writing happens in editing, just so
it
everybody knows.
does.
Yeah.
That's not a joke. I didn't really believe it at first because I was like, oh, well, this feels pretty complete. Oh my gosh, no, no, no. It's
Right.
changed so much since the very first draft. But if I hadn't puked it out, like it wouldn't be a lot of the stuff that I put in, I wasn't even planning to put in. So like
That's
I
right.
think it's just important to get it out of you and then deal with what is on the page later.
Yeah.
And it's still fun editing as much as I complain. It actually is fun because you're getting the sentence more and more perfect basically. Like you're feeling like this is exactly how I want it to sound when they say it in their head, like this is the exact word that I mean. Sometimes I would have to debate my editors because I would word something weird on purpose because that's how I wanted to say it, and you have to
Yep.
kind of be willing to argue that. Sometimes it depends on, it's just really fun. It's a fun process. It was long and hard, but also really fun. And now I'm hoping that people with disabilities and I mean especially OI, but honestly anyone who experiences that, I want them to be able like I there's so many books out there where you're going along, especially in you probably know this from fitness or wellness, like you're going along, you're getting a lot out of it, and then disability comes up and suddenly you want to like chuck it against the wall because the way they write about disability is so horrible or like so misguided.
That's
And so
right.
I'm really hoping that this book feels like you can feel comfortable all the way through because I hope and I'm sure there's some mistake in there somewhere where somebody won't feel seen, but I really want people with disabilities to feel like this book is a love letter to them and anyone else who wants to come along on the ride.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I'm for sure that it's going to be received that way. So, what is your plan with the book now? We're going to go on a book tour, book signing tour, on a book speaking tour. Like, what's the plan?
The plan is, book release day starts the tour. And so it'll be like 6 shows that the publisher's helping me to set up, which is really cool of them. And there'll be a book signing after each show. And then after that, the goal is to just get out and do a lot of speaking and whenever I do a concert, try to get into a bookstore, like try to piggyback both of those things and just spread the word about the book. I actually have in baby form, an idea for a book that I would like to write next, but I'm going to focus on, this year is really about getting this book out into the world and hopefully I'd love to see it in schools like colleges for sure in the long run. Like I'd love for this to be because there's many majors that it could affect, like music, education, medical school, health and human service. Like there's many people that I think directly would be spoken to through this book, and I'm hoping that colleges are receptive to that idea because
Yeah.
the next generation's where it's at, in
Yeah.
terms of making these changes. So I want to have lots of chances to talk to people in that age group. So we'll see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, are we looking at, we're looking paperback, hardcover, ebook, audiobook? What are we looking at? How can people, what media versions can they get in? What formats can they get it in?
Well, this particular run as of April is a hardcover book, an ebook, and an audiobook, and large print as well. It's but that is really, if you feel compelled, like please support the book because I think getting more. I want people to realize with the disability applies to us, and we're a lot of the population. We're 26% of the population has some sort of disability. So we're not a niche issue, but disability also applies to the what is that? The other 75% of people who know someone with a disability or have a parent or have a friend or have a coworker. And so I want this book to cross the threshold into mainstream. So anything you can do to spread the word, it really, really helps, because I would love to see disability be taken seriously as like a voice that needs to be part of the culture all the time, not just on July 26th or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me about the audiobook. How was that recording the audiobook, and what can we expect from that?
The audiobook is kind of its own beast, its own project almost. I read it, so it's my voice narrating the story. There's little snippets of my own music underneath supporting the scene changes and the action, and it's kind of its own immersive, I hope, experience of the book. Obviously, the story is first and foremost, but the music is a big part of it, and that's what made it really fun to create.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing because, I mean, that's who you are. It is your story.
Yeah.
It is your voice. It is your music all in one. So I can't wait. I'm going to listen to the audiobook too, even after I read the other paper, after I read the hardcover. So for sure. Yeah.
Yay. Thank
Now
you.
I've got
Thanks.
I've got two more questions for you before we wrap up. Number one is, if you could sit down with someone who's maybe newly diagnosed with OI, right? Or someone who's just, maybe feeling exhausted from managing it, right? It is a lot. It is a lot. And I know our viewers that come to OILife, that are part of this community and part of this channel and this show, we're all different, living different lives. So, what would you want them to hear if they're in that position where they're maybe challenged right now with, navigating a life with OI? What would you want them to hear?
I would want them to hear that they are valuable and that they deserve to have support, and that it's not their fault that our society makes that hard sometimes. And I would say two other things. I would say that the way to having a fulfilling life, regardless of what's happening with your body or your mind, is to figure out the things that really light you up and find a way to touch them in some form as often as you can. So I love music, right? But when I break my arm, I can't play violin, but I can still listen to music. I can still write music. I can still sing. If I ever lost the use of my hands or something, I could look at adaptive music equipment. There's ways to connect with what we love in more than just one way. Being outside, it can be as simple as sitting out on your porch, just making sure that you still give yourself the gift of the things that you love to do, even if you have to be creative about how you get there. I'm a really big believer that I love setting goals. I love progress. I think you're probably the same way, where you're like, this is my goal and I'm going to go after it. But I realized, I actually gave a TED talk about this, but you do not cease to be valuable, even if you break all your bones and you can't do anything for 6 weeks. You are the same person the whole time. And so you deserve to connect with the stuff that you love and just find a way to give yourself that. And then the other thing is, I really think when you're struggling, especially, getting support is obviously key, but then connecting with uplifting material really helps. I can't overstate the importance of that in my life. A lot of people have asked, how do you stay so positive? How do you keep wanting to work for someone? It's because I read the news. I keep up on stuff, but I really make a point to seek out inspirational stuff that has a broader meaning than what's happening right now. I think if we are human beings, in my view of the world, are here to learn how to be better at loving and creating and being part of this world. And there's so many ways to do that. It's not about money. It's not It's not even about like making albums. Like everybody could hate all the next albums I ever create, and I'm not less valuable, you know? And so OI does sometimes like really derails your plans. I mean, I especially when I was younger, when I was breaking more often, like, I mean, I remember I got into an elite like group, orchestra group, and like I broke my arm right before it started. And it's like, it is disappointing. And I think trying to find ways where you're still giving yourself the things that make you um, feel like true to your purpose. And it might be hard. You might gotta really dig for a way for you to do it. Like if you're an avid outdoors person, maybe it's going to be harder to figure it out, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some way to connect, even if it's mentoring other people. Like just so many ways to connect with what we love. I guess that would be the best advice. I think that has helped me. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Obviously, I mean, like a lot of times we don't have a choice. We gotta ask for help anyways. But you know, mentally, like you know, if you're struggling, it's okay. It's really, I think we sometimes minimize how much we're going through because our disability is like unbreakable. Well, you're wearing the hat right now, and so and that's not bad to say, you know, I'm going to keep fighting or whatever. But it's also okay to say like, this is not actually. I've had a few pretty low points. I mean, I wrote about some of them in the book, and what helps is counseling. You know what I mean? Like it's okay.
Right. Talking to somebody.
Like,
yeah.
It's real. It's okay. And so, I guess those would be my two main things. And then the thing that helped my mom, I know when I was born, is an older lady with OI, called her. And I don't even know how she found out about us because it was way before the internet was like a common thing. But she told my mom that don't worry, she'll eventually do all the stuff she wants to do. It just might be later and it might look a little different than everybody else. And so you don't have to be on the same timeline as all your friends. You don't have like, it's more about like, how can you be like, who are you really? Like, what do you bring to the table? Sometimes our biggest, I mean, not just sometimes, I think pretty much almost always, our biggest challenge ends up being the place where we can help other people the most and where we can access our creativity the most. So like, it's not a surprise to me that people with OI do become speakers or artists or activists because it teaches you a lot in the world. If you experience life with such a like intense physicality of like how you live, and you realize you're mortal and all these things like from a very young age, it kind of helps you see through a lot of the stuff that people chase after, or it can. Doesn't always, right? But if you like follow that because we have a lot of wisdom in our life experience that can help. Because I don't think disability is so much a you have it or you don't. I think all humans are these frail mortal creatures that are on some kind of spectrum between birth and death, and like we can help anyone like understand what their purpose is or what they think is important if we share truthfully what we think has helped us, because it'll probably help them too. We're all just on this really weird roller coaster of life, and we can help each other. And I think that's cool that you're trying, you know, encouraging people. And if you're in a low spot, this low spot will come back someday as a lesson that you learned and will probably be useful to somebody else. So like keep going, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's powerful. Everything you just said right there is so powerful for everybody to know. And it's true. And, you know, the philosophy of Unbreakable isn't the fact that we don't break. It's just the fact of remembering that we are unbreakable, even in those broken moments. Like we will heal. We will come back. And that's the biggest point about just the mentality of being unbreakable. So I totally agree. And I agree with you that, you know, people should really think about how they can, you know, just get through those moments, understand they will pass, right? Everything will pass.
Yeah.
So
yeah, my dad always said that. He always said, I think it's in the Bible, but he said, "This too shall pass." All the time. That was like his like motto, basically. But it serves me well because I think you're right. Like that, it's really hard to see it sometimes, but nothing ever stays the same. And if it did, we'd all be screwed. Like there'd be no food to eat. You know,
that's right.
Like the world has to change for us to keep being part of it. You know, that's just literally the nature of the world. So it's okay to be sad and be struggling, but just know that it will pass, especially if you are proactive. I mean, I'm pretty big into like man, I'm feeling crummy. I think I need to do this. And that's only because when I got to a really, really low point and like really wasn't functioning, it was after some medical trauma. I finally got help, and I realized the next time I started feeling that way, I kind of like had a red flag. Like I knew what was coming, and so then I could get help faster. And I think it's just a lesson of learning, like, when do I feel out of balance and when do I need to actually get some support? And you'll notice it sooner. So even if you're going through the worst time of your life right now, just trust that you will eventually learn to catch it sooner next time if you get the help you need. So like, don't be afraid to ask for help, for sure.
That's right. Those things that we're afraid of, like you were saying, like asking for help or just acknowledging the pain, etc. Like just do those right away so that you can just have the experience of that, because then that experience is going to be helpful the next time it happens.
It really is. And yeah, it truly is. It's hard to know it till you do it, but you will agree with us if you go through this experience eventually.
You'll see.
Yeah.
You'll see. It'll be yeah. You'll thank us later.
Yeah. I mean, it's so fun though to like be talking specifically to your community. I didn't get to go to any of those conventions growing up that like wasn't part. I knew one other person with OI, well, two, I guess, in my childhood. It was a very different, like the world is much more connected now. So I think it's really cool that there's a podcast specific to this, because it is such a unique way to travel the world with these bodies. And I think it's really cool that you have a whole community.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. And you got to definitely come. We do a OILife group. It's every third Wednesday of the month. We jump on Zoom and we all just OIers just talking about stuff,
That's cool.
And so
I'll
definitely
will have to show up.
Yeah, I'd love for you to come and, maybe we'll get you down as a special guest, later on this year. Would be a great time.
That'd be really fun. Yeah, I would love that.
Let's definitely do that. So
cool.
Tell everybody where they can get connected with you, what the best way is to, find your book, and all of that great stuff.
Yeah, well, my website is violinscratches.com, like a scratch, violinscratches.com. That's got like the book and the show information and videos and albums and all that stuff is all kind of in the one place. I also have a Substack called Creative Living for Everybody. And it's been a really fun place to explore different disability themes, but also spirituality and all sorts of things that I'm interested in. And so that's a place to get involved. We try to have a Zoom meetup about once a month as well. And so that's been fun because you get to realize there's just a lot of ways disability, it's not, some people are disabled, some people love people who are disabled, and some people are just there because they resonate with what we're talking about. And so it's a really fun group. And the book should be available at every place you buy books. If you don't find it, ask them to order it. It wasn't meant to be perfect. And just the audiobook, it should be available everywhere too. So I'm just really excited to get it out in the world and see, meet people who, it's going to be really weird. I'm not ready for it. It feels very similar to the Tiny Desk, where you're like, I think everything's about to change, but I don't really know how. This beginning chapter of the book, I think it's going to unfold to lead to some different adventures, which is pretty exciting and a little scary, pretty fun. Yeah, so that's where we're at.
It's all going to be fun. That's the point. It's all going to be an amazing adventure and an experience for you. It's just, I'm so excited for you. I'm so proud of seeing and watching your whole journey. I mean, it's just amazing. I'm so glad that this book is out now, and it's just going to be, I can't wait to see where your career goes now and how your life expands. So thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me and just kind of hanging out and chatting about this stuff. It's been a really great time.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. It's really awesome to see you again, and we'll be in touch. I'm sure our paths will keep crossing.
All right, so that's a wrap on this OILife Spotlight with Gaelynn Lea. Conversations like this are why OILife exists. It's not always to explain OI to the world, but also to create space for real voices, lived experiences, and the many ways people navigate life with OI. If this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It helps the space grow, and it makes sure that you don't miss future spotlights, community conversations, and stories just like this one. You'll find links to Gaelynn's work in the video description, and if you feel like it, leave a comment and share what stood out for you. Those moments of connection matter more than you might think. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the community, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.